Kowloon Walled City, once the most densely populated place on Earth. April 2014 marked the 20th anniversary of the demolition of the Kowloon Walled City, a largely ungoverned slum once considered the densest human settlement on Earth. Also known as the City of Darkness, it housed around 50,000 inhabitants in 300 buildings, crammed together into a tiny space that followed no rules or regulations. This video recreates the historical process that led to the creation and eventual disappearance of this unique city. The history of the Kowloon Walled City can be traced back to China's Song dynasty. In 960 AD, the original 6-acre plot of land began to be used as an outpost to regulate the salt trade. Little changed until 1810, when China established a small coastal fort and years later surrounded it with a defensive wall. The fortifications, however, failed to prevent the British from occupying the settlement in 1899, more than 50 years after they colonized Hong Kong. When Hong Kong came under Japanese occupation during the Second World War, the wall was raised, and the stones were used to expand nearby Kai Tak Airport. The settlement returned to Chinese rule in 1945. By 1947, more than 2,000 refugees wishing to live under Chinese rule had flooded the city. As Britain ended up adopting a hands-off approach, it became a haven for those who wished to live outside the law. By 1950, the city came under control of the Chinese mafia, known as the Triads, and illegal activities started to flourish. In the 1960s, a building boom occurred, and the walled city quickly turned into the infamous, sprawling, crowded, and anarchic city that it is remembered for today. Buildings constructed with no regard for safety standards gave shelter to a fast-growing population, but as the city grew taller, daylight was gradually blocked out, earning it the nickname City of Darkness. The dramatic increase of inhabitants, which grew fivefold in 40 years, put more pressure on the inadequate infrastructure and caused the squalid living conditions to deteriorate further. The city was so densely populated that Hong Kong and New York today would feel empty in comparison. For the 50,000 people living in the city in the 1990s, only 8 standpipes provided potable water. Water also came from wells, but people complained it was murky, foul-smelling, and contained soot-like particles. Living conditions were squalid, but the rent was cheap. At just 35 Hong Kong dollars, about $4 today, a month, which made up for the cramped and dirty spaces, patchy or non-existent electricity, and no garbage collection. Garbage was usually dumped on the building's rooftop. The city was especially attractive for dentists and manufacturers who could practice without license, the Triads who could run brothels, gambling houses and drug dens, and visitors who could find dog meat to eat, which was illegal in Hong Kong. After almost 50 years of effective anarchy, the city became an embarrassment for the British, who started to tear it down in 1993. The demolition was completed by April 1994. Residents received compensation and the site was transformed into a Qing dynasty-style garden. Despite the squalid living conditions, many former residents fondly remember the walled city. They considered it their home, their community, and although it was undoubtedly poor, many of them thought of it as generally happy.